Welcome once again to BamaFever.com. I'm Chris Stewart along with Ryan Brown of JOX 94.5 and also my partner each week on Inside Southeastern Football presented by Legacy Credit Union. It runs on CW21 Saturday mornings at 10:30 throughout the college football season. Here we are 2 weeks away from the game, and yet you've got LSU taking on an Auburn team in which a game is just as big for them, but Alabama and Tennessee, as you and I talked about on ISF, unbelievable that the Volunteers are a 4-touchdown underdog.
Yeah, I never thought I'd live to see that day, and we've been talking a lot about this rivalry this week. When they split the divisions, this rivalry didn't really lose a whole lot, Alabama and Tennessee. But one thing that has caused it not to take a back burner, but to share a little bit of the limelight, is LSU getting so good. And and that Alabama-LSU game, not just this year, but the last few years, has had so much meaning in the West race. Alabama-Tennessee is still a huge rivalry, but that Alabama-LSU game has kind of snuck in there and stolen some of the limelight.
All of the talk in terms of the media, fans, former Alabama players, is about how great this team is right now. For me, as someone who works pretty closely to things, the players have not bought into all of that talk, and it's also obvious, not that there was any question, Nick Saban is not concerning himself with how the historical perspective of this team is.
Yeah, it's an awful good team. I mean, you can't watch this team and how dominant they've played and not think of them historically with some of the great Alabama football teams. But I have noticed that. I mean, you talk to players and they say last year this team got a little bit of complacency, and this team became a little bit of, we're the best team in the country, it's going to come to us easily. And they lost their hunger and they lost their edge. And in this conference, if you lose just that much of your edge, you lose football games. And, it cost them at South Carolina, it cost them against LSU, too late to turn it around against Auburn, and Auburn had that edge. I think this team has kept that edge.
To me, this squad not only has its edge, they thrive. They're like sharks, Ryan. They love blood in the water, whether you're talking about the offense or the defense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's no lifting the foot off the gas pedal.
Or the throat.
Or the throat. I mean, it's 17-7 Saturday in Oxford, and they come out and have one of the best quarters of football they've had in years, and just completely blow that game open. And if Nick Saban doesn't call off the dogs, there's no telling what Trent Richardson does in that game and how much Alabama scores. Nick Saban had some compassion on Houston Nutt and pulled those guys out.
Our statistician on the Crimson Tide Sports Network is Brian Roberts, and he had a great line off air, obviously, saying that this is the only team in college football that does indeed stop running up the score by throwing it rather than running the football.
That's a great point, yeah.
It's amazing how good they are when they line up and run it. Here's the question going forward, I believe. Are they able to continue to do I should say the bigger question, when they get into the fourth quarter of a game, if it is a tight ball game, how do they respond? Because games have been over with going into those final 10 or 15 minutes throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, it's funny. I had this same exact conversation earlier this week. Let's just say the Tennessee game or the LSU game comes down to a 47-yard field goal. If you're an Alabama fan, that's something you haven't seen. You haven't seen this team be pushed to the wall and how they respond. I think I know how they'll respond because I think I know kind of the chemistry and the DNA of this team based on the last few seasons. But you don't know till you've been there. And I think if you're an Alabama fan, that's kind of your fear. You hope every game's a 30-point blowout, obviously. But deep down inside, it's not going to be. There are going to be a couple games. Even the greatest teams ever have 2 or 3 games a year where they get tested and they prevail, and that's what makes them champions.
Remind everybody where they can find you on the radio.
JOX 94.5 every weekday 10 to 2 with Jim Dunaway and Lance Taylor, and then right here on CW21 10:30 Saturday mornings.
Always enjoy that, and as we are moving from summer into, we may have skipped fall and gone straight to winter based on the temperature as we're taping this today, but BamaFever.com, the best place to find your Alabama gear, and also the winter wear, the fall and winter wear coming in daily. So continue to check the website and also each of the brick and mortar locations, as we call them, with Bama Fever and Team Fever stores. For Ryan Brown, I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks so much for joining me here on BamaFever.com.